Welcome into the second installment of Sports by the Numbers. I'm Ryan Bedell, and in case you missed us yesterday, I'm going to be taking you through the ins and outs of the sports betting world, whether that be picks, bad beats, even a bit of sports betting education sprinkled in there. For day one yesterday, we started with a look at some of the most basic terminology used in the wide world of sports betting to help kind of familiarize those new to the recently legalized activity in the Show Me State. Well, today we'll dive into a few more simple terms as well as some more complex fundamentals of wagering on sports. We've already covered the basics of what a straight bet is, a money line, parlay, over-under, and so on and so forth. And in case you missed that, you can see episode 1 on 4 States Plus at any time. So the first concept on the slate today is going to be prop bets. Prop bets are a specific type of betting market that focuses solely on player statistics or an in-game event rather than the final outcome of the game. And there are 3 core types of prop betting markets that you will see whenever you're casually scrolling through a betting platform like FanDuel or DraftKings. We've got player props, team props, and novelty props. So a player prop is likely the most common and one of my personal favorite markets offered by the sports books, and often a market where an edge can be found against the books in certain spots. So simply put, if you bet on a player prop, you are betting on a certain player's individual stats. For example, how many rebounds an NBA player might get in a specific game, or how many passing yards Patrick Mahomes will throw for. The books set a specific over-under line on each player's major stat categories, and when betting this market, you are simply wagering on a specific athlete to finish the game with more or less than the original line offered. Next up is team props, which can also be found in future betting markets, such as how many wins the Kansas City Chiefs finish with in a given season. Those lines often set around 9.5 or 10.5, and you would simply go over or under that mark. So for specific in-game wagers, however, some simple examples would be betting on how many points a specific team is going to score. So let's say you were going to take the Kansas City Chiefs to score over 23.5 points in a specific game, and they score exactly 24. Well, even if they didn't cover the spread, or even if the total combined points of the game doesn't go over the standard over-under line, well, you'd still cash that bet as the Chiefs scored over the line set on their specific team prop. You can also bet first team to score markets, which, as you'll see with this example on the screen, Arsenal at -150. Sometimes they can be a little bit more juiced depending on the matchup, and we're going to dive into exactly what juice and juicing odds kind of means here in a second. But lastly, for prop betting, we've got novelty props. This is probably the least common form of prop bets, but one that you will commonly see gain popularity when it comes time to major events such as the Super Bowl or even March Madness, which tips off tomorrow officially. There are some ridiculous novelty props out there, but some that are quite popular within the betting community. So take the Super Bowl, for example. You can simply bet on what color the Gatorade shower will be for the winning team. You can also bet how long the national anthem will last or which song the halftime performer will play first. You can kind of see why the term novelty is thrown in there, because these bets truly have little to nothing to do with the actual action on the field or court. Another example, as March Madness is about to get started tomorrow, you can bet whether or not there will be a buzzer beater at any point in the tournament. So those are just a few examples of novelty props, and you might have noticed all of those examples, the odds attached there were listed mostly as -110, some -150, even a +100, even money sprinkled in there. But what exactly do those odds mean? This is something every sports bettor should at least have a basic understanding on before throwing down a wager, because without a baseline knowledge of how odds work and how they affect the payouts, it can lead to a lot of confusion, even frustration sometimes. So let's go ahead and avoid all of that. And similar to the fact that there are 3 different types of prop bets, there's also 3 unique types of ways that odds are displayed on a sports betting platform. We've got American odds, which are the ones that you just saw in that example, the most common example, decimal odds, and more common internationally for that one. And last but not least, fraction odds, which frankly, if you see a betting platform that offers only lines and fraction odds, run. Get out of there. Just go back to an American odds book, such as a -120 favorite, +200 underdog. That's kind of the more, or by far the most common in the United States. But they aren't just numbers. Each example of odds means something different entirely. Let's go ahead and dive into it. We'll start with the most common example of -110 odds, which you will practically see about 70% of the time when you're betting on a simple spread bet or an over-under bet, which we covered in yesterday's episode. So theoretically, if you're betting on a spread, you should get even money back on your bet, right? You might think you bet 20 bucks, you win 20 bucks if it cashes. Well, that's what they want you to think, kind of. There is a reason Las Vegas has all the pretty lights, and there's a reason DraftKings has the budget to hire practically every celebrity you've ever heard of to push betting advertisements down your throat. But I digress. With a $20 bet on the standard -110 odds, you would actually only profit $18.18, and that is because the sportsbooks take what's called juice on every single line they offer. And juice is essentially just a fun term to kind of describe the sportsbook's cut, the financial cut they take of every transaction made on their platform. You can really see why this matters when we dive into implied probability. Every line set by the sportsbooks, whether it be minus 110, minus 300, even plus 2,000, directly translates to a percentage that tells you how likely the outcome of an event is based on the odds set by the odds makers. So, using the most common example of minus 110 odds, that's going to translate to 52.4% implied probability. Well, you might be wondering, Ryan, if it's 52.4% odds on both sides, that adds up to 104.8. That's impossible. Well, that's because that extra 4.8% left over is what's considered the vigorish, aka the vig that the sportsbook takes on each bet. The closer the public is to being split 50-50 on each side of a certain bet, well, that's better for the sports books because that would essentially guarantee a 4.8% profit on every wager placed on any given game in that instance. So it is a little tricky to understand kind of all the ins and outs of what exactly those odds means and the story they kind of tell when a line moves up or it moves down. But really, the main takeaway should simply be that sportsbooks will always take a cut. Even if your bets are hitting at a 51% rate, which you might think would net you a small profit, well, actually, you would still be down quite a bit due to that juice concept we just went over. If we're talking about just straight bets in particular, based on the most common odds at minus 110, you'd actually need to be hitting your bets at around 55% at a minimum to see decent profits due to the juice set on each line. So 51% to 55% might not seem like a big jump, but if you are betting regularly, that truly makes a world of a difference when it comes to profits and losses. So that is kind of enough betting education for the day. We'll dive into more as we go on, but let's go ahead and switch gears to some picks for tonight's slate. But first, a recap from yesterday's picks, and it wasn't exactly the ideal start, going 1-2 overall on 3 picks, but if it wasn't for a near buzzer-beating shot from Texas last night with 1.1 seconds on the clock, the 1-2 would be reversed to a 2-1 overall day. So it is what it is. It's March. Some tough bets are going to happen. Bound to happen, bad beats, but SGA a total whiff on that one. The logic behind Wembanyama's picks panned out perfectly as the Spurs pulled away down the stretch, and Wembanyama had no need to pull it from deep up 20+. So yesterday is in the past. It's on to the next. Let's go ahead and dive into the picks for Wednesday's slate, March 18th. And I'll be honest, I don't necessarily love the board tonight, but we've got 5 picks on my card. We're going to start with some NBA player props, as I've got 3 of them on my card tonight. First up is Rudy Gobert under 13.5 rebounds, which hopefully we can pop up here on the screen. That's on DraftKings at minus 125 odds at the time I am saying this. Now, if anybody can cover that line, it's going to be Gobert. He is on a monster, or he has been a monster on the boards this season, but this is simply too high of a line when the Timberwolves center is projected closer to 11.1 rebounds for this matchup. So yes, he had 19 in Minnesota's last game, but in 3 games against the Jazz this season, he has gone under this line all 3 times. So I'm taking Rudy under 13.5 rebounds. And next up, we'll move to the Atlanta Hawks against the Dallas Mavericks matchup, in which I've actually got 2 picks on my card. Though we are not combining them into a same-game parlay, these are just simple straight bets each. So first up, I'm going to be taking the Dallas Mavericks against the spread at plus 8.5. It has been a brutal stretch for Dallas, but the Mavs are beginning to get healthy once again. They've got Cooper Flagg, Najee Marshall, P.J. Washington, all expected to start tonight. And on the other hand, Atlanta is on a strong 10-game winning streak. That's the longest streak for the Hawks organization since the 2014-2015 season. Now, we aren't betting on the Mavs to win this game outright. Just cover the 8.5-point spread. And my second pick for this one will be a player prop, and I'm taking Najee Marshall over 0.5 three-pointers made. Marshall has hit at least 1 3-ball in 4 of the last 5 meetings against the Hawks, a team that really likes to stretch the perimeter. They play fast in transition, leading to a lot of high-scoring results. So Marshall has also hit a 3 in 3 straight games and has become a go-to scoring option for Dallas whenever he's hot, kind of proven by his 32 points and 25 points respectively in the Mavericks' last 2 outings. So keeping it rolling in the NBA, the last player prop of the night is going to be on Lakers star Luka Doncic going over 30.5 points against the Houston Rockets. Now, typically I would avoid taking star player props, as typically the value lies in the role players or the secondary options on each team, but I really do like this spot for Luka. These teams faced off just 2 days ago, and in that matchup, Luka finished with 36 points. He's gone over 30 points in 37 games this season, and he's also gone over this specific line in 4 of his last 6 outings. So Luka leads the league in scoring for a reason, and I'm going to back him to have another strong night against the defense that struggled to stop him just 2 days ago. And last last but certainly not least, we'll take a stab at a college basketball pick. But it's not the March Madness first four. We're going with some NIT action between St. Joseph's and Colorado State. And I am backing the Hawks to stay hot and cover the 5.5-point spread. Yes, Colorado State has home court advantage in the opening round of the NIT, but St. Joe's has performed well on the road, going 8-5 against the spread, cashing at a 61.5% rate. Furthermore, the Hawks are one of the hottest teams in basketball entering the tournament. St. Joe's has covered the spread in 14 of their last 16 games to end the year, and they have won 7 of their last 8 entering this one straight up. So they don't need to win this one outright necessarily, but 5.5 points is kind of a lot for a postseason tournament when the teams are relatively evenly matched. So I'll take the Hawks to round out my card. And just to recap, my full card today is going to include Rudy Gobert under 13.5 rebounds, Najee Marshall over 0.5 threes, Luka Doncic over 30.5 points, the Dallas Mavericks to cover plus 8.5 against Atlanta, and lastly, St. Joe's to cover plus 5.5 against Colorado State in the NIT. So we didn't have any picks on the March Madness first four this time around, but we're going to wrap things up with a few interesting betting tidbits to keep in mind if you're going to be placing wagers on the big dance. So for starters, if you were looking to bet on the eventual national champion before the tournament begins, a wild but kind of true tidbit is that since 1997, there has been 0 national championship winning teams located west of the state of Texas. So this would rule out teams like Arizona, but it would benefit a team like Duke along the East Coast. So, of course, weird streaks like this are inevitably going to be broken eventually, but it's certainly something to keep in the back of your mind. Now, this next one says a lot about the current landscape of NIL and the modern-day transfer portal, seeing top talent all congested into a small cluster of big brand-name schools. So before the first round begins on Thursday, all 16 top 4 seeds are currently double-digit favorites on the spread in the round of 64. For example, Michigan is 30-point favorites in their round 1 matchup against the 16 seed, while 4-seed Arkansas are roughly 15-point favorites against Hawaii in the round of 64 matchup. So this marks the first time since the tournament expanded in 1985 that all 16 top 4 seeds are double-digit favorites. And we mentioned the NIL era and how that's kind of affecting the landscape of college basketball. So let's take a look at how well Cinderella teams have performed in the big dance in the last 5 years. Since 2021, 13 through 16 seeds in the round of 64 are just 6-58 overall straight up and 25-39 against the spread. This means if you were betting the spread on every Cinderella underdog for the last 5 years, you would be losing a 25.3% return on investment. Along those same lines, we mentioned how the top teams are becoming more talent loaded over the last few years. So let's take last season's tournament, for example. Favorites of 8 or more points went a perfect 21-0 straight up in the 2025 NCAA tournament. Sometimes there are anomalies sprinkled in there, like the 2007 season, in which teams favored by 8 or more went 22-0 in the first round. But nonetheless, this trend points to the shifting landscape of college basketball, one that might be the end for crazy Cinderella runs in March, but you never know. The last interesting tidbit we'll dive into is first half unders in March Madness. Now, yesterday, we went over exactly what the over-under is for each game. Well, in basketball, you could also bet on just the over-under for the first half. And when it comes to the tournament games, the first half under has actually been wildly profitable. Since the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act was repealed in 2018, first half unders in the tournament are hitting at a 55.1% rate, which might not seem crazy, but as we mentioned earlier, 55% is all you need to see substantial profits over time. Now, diving into this one more specifically, if you were to take a look at the games played in the 1 p.m. Eastern time slot or earlier since March Madness in 2012, first half unders are 67, 44, and 3 overall, which translates to an absurd 60.4% win rate. While some people like to say life is too short to bet the under and root for points because, well, that's kind of more fun a lot of times, the unders have really been performing astronomically well when it comes time for the big dance in some neutral arenas. So there's a lot of historical betting data and factors to consider when making your picks for the tournament this week. And really, we could go on and on about all these random but kind of interesting tidbits for March Madness. But for now, that is going to wrap up Sports by the Numbers. Thanks for tuning in, and best of luck with your picks.